Well, Borodar, good morning everyone. What a pleasure to have you here at the Pulse stage for Wales Tech Week 2025. Wales Tech Week is brought to you by Technology Connected and part funded by Welsh Government. We're here to shine a spotlight on Welsh technology, celebrate our thriving ecosystems and champion homegrown innovation on the world stage. So a massive thank you to our event partners who have made all of this possible for us today. Throughout the day, you'll be hearing from industry experts who are at the heart of tech's evolution, sharing insights on driving business growth, unlocking new opportunities, and shaping the future of how we connect, create, and thrive. So, let's get started. The first session here today on the Pulse stage, in collaboration with the high-value manufacturing Catapult, will explore the UK manufacturing landscape and look at why people are at the heart of its digital and technological transformation. Joining us here for this fireside chat is Jacqui Murray. Jacqui is Director of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult for South Wales. Her background's in the Welsh steel industry, environmental regulation, UK battery and advanced materials innovation. We also have Deputy Chief Technology Officer of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult, Dr. John Blackburn. Now, he focuses on strengthening HMV Catapult technology communities and implementing the technology strategy. He helps to advance the network's collective technical credibility and thought leadership within the technology space. So please put your hands together and welcome Jacqui and John to the stage.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro. We're actually a couple of welders, just to put that out there and set this scene today. So she made it sound very good, but do keep that in mind. So my background, in fact, I came here when I was 22 to go and work on Lamworn Steelworks, not that far away. And I have been working very, very fortunately for the last 30 across so many different manufacturing areas, be it regulation or be it of heavy industry or be it on that steelworks. And I've had such, it's been really useful to actually practically be at the point where we're putting technologies in. And people do talk about steel and they think it's old, but actually we had neural networks on those mills in late 80s. So, you know, for me, it's what we want to talk about, and what we're here today is how do we really get technology into industry and into manufacturing in particular. John, you know, whilst we obviously both share a love of welding, do you want to introduce yourself, to give a bit more sort of on where you've been and what you do, because we've known each other a long time.
Yeah, so I've got a few notes here, apologies. It's Monday morning, so my brain hasn't quite warmed up yet. But my first introduction to welding was about 20 years ago. I left university, moved to Canada for a year, and worked in the pulp sector. We worked across different mills during their maintenance, repair and overhaul, and it was there where I was first introduced to heavy industry, welding, fabrication, inspection and through life integrity management. I then came back after a year. They didn't kick me out, but my visa did run out, so we had to come back. And I joined the Welding Institute as a research engineer, and I was there for 18 years. With a focus on advanced manufacturing technologies, typically advanced welding technologies, looking at laser welding, friction welding, high productivity arc welding, and then looking at material, structure integrity and through life integrity management. Now, being at the Welding Institute for 18 years, it's a research and technology organisation. It gave me huge exposure to different sectors across the UK, from aerospace to automotive to defence to oil and gas. And then in 2024, I took the big decision to leave the Welding Institute and join the High Value Manufacturing Capital as Deputy CTO. So I've got the great opportunity now to work across our network of 25 centres, about 3,500 colleagues, the majority of which are engineers and scientists and technologists, and working with that tech community really to help strategize our capability, how we're going to develop it to meet current and future industry need, and how we then build the capacity to support the right demand in the right regions. And a real key to that is engaging with the ecosystem, so engaging from academia all the way through to collaborators at RTOs and then into industry as well.
And that's how we sort of get to work together, because I'm here. Ben is back with Amy behind you. Yeah, we've got Isaac and Orla as well. So actually we have a small team down in South Wales looking to provide a window to those 3,500 specialists for Welsh businesses as well. So the stand over to your right, I'm going to plug it shamelessly. You can see the demonstration zone over there. That's all some of those specialists. So do go and meet some people and try out some new technologies. But John, let's get into the nitty gritty. So manufacturing for a long time in UK government didn't seem to be a priority, but they seem to have really woken up to to manufacturing. Why is it now so important? What have they suddenly gotten on to?
So I think first I'd say, for me, it's always been important. Whether the politicians have agreed or not, I think it's always been important. And I think, to a point, Wales have been leading the way on this. They've had the manufacturing action plan for a number of years now.
Yeah.
Hopefully starting to see the benefits of that. It's now we've got the UK government coming forward with their industrial strategy and their advanced manufacturing sector plan, that hopefully we see some alignment and we start to see them leveraging off each other. But coming back to your question, I think we're in Wales. It's Wales Tech Week, so maybe let's start with some Wales-focused numbers. So about 1 in 10 jobs in Wales are related to manufacturing. It employs about 140,000 people in Wales. And it generates about 16% of the economy. So about £15 billion of revenue is generated by manufacturing every year in Wales. And the numbers keep getting better. 50% of Welsh exports are related to manufacturing. I mean, I find that particularly incredible. It's better than the UK as a whole produces. Outside of the numbers, for me, it's probably about identity as well. You know, it's not just the economics. It's about the identity of communities and a nation. Wales, I think you've got a good claim to say that you are the first industrial nation. You know, you look at the more indigenous industries in Wales, and going back, 150 years, you've got coal, slate, tin, and then into steel. And I think for me, manufacturing around those industries built a sense of community, a sense of family identity. One of my grandfathers was a coal miner, and 2 generations ago, but I still identify with that sector very strongly. As a young child, I still just about remember the miners' strikes of the 80s. I think that is particularly important.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Welsh manufacturing sector's moved on a lot more since then. It's a lot more diverse. And it's less about the raw materials, and it is now actually more about the high value add activity. So there is still activity in steel. That's at the heart of the UK news, fairly regularly. Hopefully for better reasons rather than worse in the future. But there's also still an industry around coal and slate and aluminium as well. But if you dig into it, there's a really strong Welsh manufacturing industry that spreads aerospace, automotive, medical, defence, and I'm sure there's a few others that I've not picked up.
Yeah, food and drink and biosciences and life sciences. Yeah, we have. For me, it's really interesting, and for the audience, just so you know, that was quite hard for an English guy who lives in Chester to say all that, particularly as a football fan. So yeah. But
I thought we weren't going to tell them I was English.
Well, hey, what can I say? So for me as well, there is something about making stuff and selling it that brings pride, but also economically, your staff, the people employed by manufacturing, are paying mortgages. And when we do see countries like Germany, US, China with big manufacturing bases having much more stable economies for shocks. And I think that's something we recognise in Wales, and we feel it in Wales, because with our economy so dependent on manufacturing, closure of anything hurts, really hurts. Deindustrialisation really hurts. But actually the opportunity then is the flip of that, and we're seeing companies like Senior Flexonics actually bringing manufacturing back to Wales. I was having a conversation last night about expanding Welsh manufacturing with a big defence company. So for me, there's some really interesting learning, as you said, that actually dates back generations. Making steel, that volume is hard. People have no idea, I think, about how hard it is to make steel. It's not easy. It's hard to do large scale fabrication. And actually, I think we've really learned. And the spin outs of that mean that, I mean, I bumped into a guy off the steelworks who was manufacturing research furnaces, and he was making carbon nanotubes on an industrial estate in Bridgend. And I was like, you're doing what, Paul? Like, I'd have never guessed that one of the engineers off the Boss plant in Lamwern had gone on and built a company making research furnaces. I mean, really, really cool stuff. It goes deep, I think.
It does, yeah.
Okay, so why are we then in HVMC so obsessed about the manufacturing tools that people can see here today, both on our stand, but actually all around you?
Well, I think we've seen manufacturing in recent time has driven economic stability. You know, you mentioned, you know, USA, China. You know, they've been economically much more stable than the UK in recent times, in part because they've got a good, strong manufacturing base. We've also seen that with COVID, manufacturing helps drive resilience, and having manufacturing onshore or with friends really helps drive resilience around, national COVID, for example. I heard about an example of a 3M shipment of masks during COVID that I think is a good example. You know, it was destined for Canada, so it's an overseas example. It's destined for Canada. At the last minute, the 3M shipment was directed by the US government to redirect it to the US, really demonstrating that if, in this particular example, if you don't have the manufacturing in your country that's critical, then in today's world where geopolitical is quite unstable, unfortunately, you're really potentially going to suffer.
Yeah, and I think we see that in some of those heavy manufacturing areas in particular. So it was great to see British Steel winning rail contracts outside of the UK. It was critical that we kept it for rail, for Network Rail, for our own rail. But actually, when you have those big companies that are manufacturing at that scale, actually they really can go forward. It's just you've got to keep investing in them and actually really valuing them, I guess. Yeah.
So I think in China and America, in part, they compete on volume. You know, they've got particularly large domestic markets that they can sell into, which allows them really to invest heavily in the infrastructure, sell into their domestic market at volume, and then compete really well internationally. In general, the UK is not particularly well placed to compete on volume. You know, as a nation, and I think Wales is at the forefront of this, our strengths are around quality. Built in Wales, built in Britain are really strong international brands, so we've got quality. Innovation is also at the heart of one of our national strengths, as is sustainability. And I think sustainability here has a couple of angles to it. One is energy. Cost of energy in the UK is particularly high at the moment. I think we've got the highest energy prices, electricity and gas, in the OECD, and they're not predicted to come down for some time. So that's driving a lot of innovation around, effectively carbon reduction and energy reduction technologies, electrification technologies. And then the other angle is resource efficiency as well. We're an island nation. We don't particularly have access to all of the critical minerals and strategic materials domestically. So we need to think quite carefully about what minerals, what materials we need as a nation to go forward. How do we use them effectively? How do we recycle them? How do we bring about circular economy principles as well? So I think as a nation, we need to compete on our strengths. And the great thing about the UK is we've got a fantastic science and engineering base, which really leads into some of the things that we're good as a nation from advanced manufacturing perspective. So we've got fantastic advanced manufacturing technologies in the UK, and we've got really growing capabilities around some technology that have got potential to disrupt and transform our capabilities as a nation. So automation, digital technologies, AI technologies really have the capability to level up all of UK manufacturing.
And I have to say, Graham's at the back here, right? So hi, Graham. So one of the things about that science and technology and innovation is I think when we've looked at manufacturing, particularly on those big raw materials, we've very much focused on efficiency and cost efficiency. It's been very driven by that, and I think we're starting to really wake up. And this transformation is really looking at actually how we can employ technology to get really productive, so we can actually make more value every hour that we're working. And I think that's really critical for people in the audience. If you've got those technologies, we're starting to wake up to those.
100%. I mean, we will compete on a global stage, so we need to be productive. You know, at the same time, we have a skills shortage in the UK. It's highly recognised, particularly in engineering and manufacturing. And these technologies can help. They can help address some of the shortages that we got in particular skills, you know, and take away some of the more menial tasks that might still be prevalent in UK industry, and allow people to focus on the higher value.
Yeah.
So I think there are technologies out there around understanding data, the value of data, how we use it to drive decision making around control of our assets, both when we're manufacturing it, but also when they're in the field. Perhaps how we remanufacture them, how we recertify them and put them back into use as well. So there's a lot of technology there, as well as then automation. I think the UK, you take the automotive sector out, the UK ranks about the same level as New Zealand in terms of adoption of automation in its industries. It's really quite low. And you know, to increase productivity, we're going to have to start adopting more automation and robotics in our manufacturing sectors as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Paul's in the audience, who's obsessed. I know he's obsessed with productivity. So actually, if we're going to do a floating offshore wind to compete with the Far East, we're going to need to have some really big automation. And for me, it really works for Wales, because I think people worry that you're going to lose jobs, but actually, when you look at the steelworks, it's all automated. You don't see many people picking up pieces of steel anymore, right? Or you don't see much welding going on that's hand welded. It's all automated, and we have people who can actually operate those machines, design them, understand how they work, and that's this crossover, I think, that we really have to exploit right now. It's really important here.
No, I completely agree, and I think welding is a really good example here. You know, if you look at all the stats,
I think welding's a good example, John.
It's always a good example, yeah. If you look at all the stats across the different sectors in the UK, you'll come up with a number of we're about 20 to 30,000 welders short, you know, of what we need. And ultimately, when you then drill into that, it's not necessarily people with, you know, manual welding capability that we need in the UK. Actually, what we need is people with more advanced manufacturing knowledge, people that understand how to develop and deploy automated advanced welding technologies such that we can get the productivity, get the throughput, and compete internationally. And it comes from not just the automation of the welding technology, but all the technologies that go around it, you know, the inspection, the materials selection as well.
Yeah. So you got a question for me then?
I've got quite a few, Jacqui. So I know here in South Wales, we've got the HVM Catapult Baglan office, and we're helping companies transform. But whenever I talk to you, you always start talking about people first. And I just wanted to dig into that a little bit more. So why is it always about people first with you, Jacqui?
Well, I think it's coming from a manufacturing engineering background rather than a technical engineering background. You know, I always chuckle at technical engineers. Sorry, John, on the basis that you always want to come up with the right answer. But actually, when you work in manufacturing, the first thing you've got to do is people. You can have the perfect answer, but if all your workforce don't want it to happen, I can tell you now, it's not happening. And yet, if you've got a flawed answer, but they want it to happen, it's amazing how quickly you can iron out the flaws because people want it to go. So, and I think this is really important. We keep talking about the opportunity and the scale of it. And the one thing I learned actually with working with steelworks teams is if they couldn't see how they were going to make the change, they were quite likely to go toe to toe with you and get very stroppy with you. So actually, if you could break it down with them, if they could start to really work out and actually map out the processes, for example, in your existing line, and work out where automation actually would make the difference, And it may not be the fancy robot cobot that the CEO wants. It might actually be just some genuine manufacturing equipment that makes one element that's really mundane and really tedious, but also a bottleneck. It may be that actually changes the day, right? And the cobot and the fancy stuff comes when you've then got the output uplifted. And you know, people in my team do sit down and help companies really plot out some of the basic stuff. But actually, when you're in a company, it's really busy. And the reason it's people is actually, you've got to overcome that fear, right? Because making big investments into tech, I bet you there's not one person here who's seen a white elephant go in or something didn't do what it was going to do. And actually, again, it's this collaborative approach. We've got to grow, right? They're just engineering problems. So how do we identify what the best answer is, not the right answer, and how do we work together to get that to work? And I think that's the bit I love watching my team and HVMC help solve, whether that's for, you know, a fabricator down in Pembroke, or whether that's for, you know, major automotive or aerospace companies. That's actually all we're trying to do, is break down something that has so many uncertainties and so much complexity, but actually a team of us can normally work out what the next step should be. And if we do it as a team, if we misstep, then much quicker we can actually work out how we come back from that. And I think there's a lot of people who know all the answers, but aren't actually doing stuff. And if you start with the people, you can get stuff to happen and build know-how so the companies can really move forward and start to really cook on gas. That's a very fossil fuel, right? But I'm old, right? So, but that's really what you're looking for in manufacturing. And you see it reflected in things like Toyota Lean, right? People, process, technologies. You know, we kind of live by that. And we also live by, I think as engineers, you know, we want to leave something better than when we actually got there. And that combination, if you can get the people stuff, you can change the world. But you know, quite often we do talk about these massive things and we throw massive numbers about. And really what we need to work out is, you know, that bit there on our line, if we just could automate that, if we could find a really good supplier who could, equipment supplier who could help us bring in that, actually that step would be the first step on a major journey. Whereas actually if someone's going to, you need to automate everything, you know, it's overwhelming. And to be fair, maybe as a manufacturing engineer, I've had guys come and tell me exactly what they thought of big steps. So I know I have to start with the people. And they're the people that will change the world. I mean, that's the bit we have to remember. Back in the day, you know, we had the world's biggest steelworks in Dowlais and in Merthyr. And that's because they didn't know the answers and they just went for it as a team. And it's that ambition combined with teamwork that I think is really, this moment is that again.
I mean, we see that tech adoption is hard, right?
Yeah.
You know, across the UK. How are you finding tech adoption in Wales?
So I think things like the steelworks and the heavy end going and this whole redesign to an electric arc, right? I think there's a lot of companies feeling that right here there's a real urgency for change. And come back to the people. I mean, that's step one of a cottage change model. We have to get a little bit fancy, right? Step two is to create a powerful coalition. And that, again, you know, it's this people. If you've got the urgency and you can find in this room people you want to work with to create your next steps, your plan, your vision, right? That's actually where we need to be. And I'm seeing that. We're seeing that. We were with a CEO of a company on Friday, you know, really, really keen to change. We were in a different company who had already changed, courtesy of recognizing they were too dependent on steelworks as a customer, and they've gone from being 90% reliant on Port Talbot and Clanwern to 10%. And you're seeing real innovation in what they're doing. And so it's here, we're doing it, but we have to, I think, accelerate it. And that's why this event for me is really important, because, you know, it allows people to talk, you know, but also we can start to show people, allow them to get hands-on with one of those dogs that walks around, all the other technologies. And as an ex-steelworker, the dog is really impressive because you try and kick it over, it won't kick over.
Is that a challenge for everyone?
Well, I don't know whether the guys would appreciate that, but the robustness of that dog makes you then go, actually, I can put sensors on that, I can put cameras on that, I can actually put that into a confined space. It could walk around a steelworks. That's the bit that you start to go, oh, it's not just a toy. It's actually really robust. It could go in somewhere where I'm not sure if there's a gas leak. It could go in somewhere where there's radioactivity potentially of low levels. So then I've got something, and it's only through increasing your own know-how that you start to go, actually, I can see some next steps. And once I've got those next steps, that's where teams can really change.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, where are we? Probably a question for you. So yeah, tell me a bit more about what you do. Because John's really clever, if you guys haven't worked that out. So he does really clever stuff. You're coming down to see us, aren't you, in January?
You obviously don't know me that well.
I know you're a welder and a football fan, so you know you've tempered my expectations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I work in the technology function across HVM Catapult. So I work with the CTOs of our centres. For those of you not familiar with HVM Catapult, we're a federated network of research and technology centres. There's 6 centres, but we have 25 sites across the UK, from as far north as Aberdeen now to as far south and west as Blackburn, our newest site. And I work with our CTOs and the tech function, looking at effectively developing our technology strategy. So how can we coordinate the development of our capability across our centres? And it's all driven by industry need. So we're working from biomanufacturing through to aerospace, through to automotive. So really cross-manufacturing in the UK. Since I've joined, one of the things I've been particularly heavily involved in is developing our technology strategy. So in the past, HVM Catapult centres have had technology strategies, but as a network, we've not had a coordinated technology strategy. So it's actually quite a difficult thing to do, but we've been developing consensus among colleagues, and we've developed a strategy now which is aligned with Innovate UK's Materials and Manufacturing 2050 vision, sector agnostic, and ultimately it's in the public domain. So if you search HVM Catapult technology strategy, you'll find a link to our current strategy. It's in consultation at the moment, that's online. And ultimately what we want to do is, how are we going to deploy our grant? How are we going to make our grant work regionally for our centres, but also nationally as a whole as well, across those 25 sites? We see it as a tool also to effectively help steer and engage the broader ecosystem. So HVM Catapult sits in the middle technology readiness levels. So we're positioned to pull in all the good research and development work that's done in UK universities, develop it, refine it, scale it, and then translate it into industry. So it becomes, the strategy becomes a tool for engaging academics at the front end, becomes a tool for engaging other research and technology organisations to support with the scale up and development, and it becomes a tool for developing industry, the end adopters as well, ultimately. We'll be launching the technology strategy in spring next year, and then it will be updated 2 yearly after that. But before then, we've got a series of workshops coming up. So we've got a workshop up in NMIS, we've got a workshop up in AMRC, and we've got a workshop in Blackburn coming up in January. So particularly looking forward, Jacqui, to bringing the technology team down to Blackburn.
Yeah.
Talking to the broader ecosystem here about the strategy, getting their feedback about, you know, where it works, perhaps where it needs to be improved, and also how we can best engage with the ecosystem down here to deliver it for them.
So if anyone wants to come and hit your technology roadmap with a cricket bat, they can come and talk to me, and we can get them in the room to
cricket bat, rocks, whatever your sport is. Yeah.
But that's what we want to do, isn't it? I mean, that for me is. When I was sat in a steelworks on the Galv line writing CapEx business cases, the strategic case was always really tricky, right? So, and this is what we're really hoping, that companies and people can come and engage with this roadmap, and it actually will help understand where UK is going and where government is going, but also where the clever people are going, but also help you frame where your company's strategy is from a technology point of view, and where you might find your way through the same sort of melee or storm, and find that pathway out of it, right?
Exactly, and I think in terms of connectivity to the broader industrial strategy, so you've got the UK industrial strategy, and underneath that you've got the sector plans. There is one for advanced manufacturing, and if you go into that, it specifically calls out the HVM Catapult's technology strategy as a key deliverable for 2026 to help guide that broader ecosystem. So I think final question for you, Jacqui, and then we can open it up to the audience.
Excellent.
And just a general one, really. How are things going down here at Baglan?
So it's great to have some of the team here as well, but for me, it's really interesting to see the different levels that we're working it with. It's a really small team, right? And we're seeing us working one-on-one with fabricators, actually helping them redesign with food and drink companies, looking at how process layout is, doing some project work with them, just giving a bit of extra sort of engineering muscle, really, to busy companies looking at where they go next. So I love that piece. We're also doing some really interesting work with startups, and that might be helping them do some prototyping on a Meditech, a little scale up that actually I think has got huge global potential, possibly. So we're currently working with them on a prototype. We've got another couple that we are looking to help them actually plan out their scale up. And the reason that's so important is if you have a startup, actually, being able to get investment into your startup, you've got to look like you really know what you're doing. And whilst you might really know your technology, actually, do you know how your technology is going to get packaged at the end of a line, and whether that's going to be verified by the time you get there? So again, that's the sort of know-how. So we're working in those spaces. We're also seeing a lot of appetite around working with the 3,500 clever guys and women that we have, looking at CR&D and funding. And I know some of those are working with BIC Innovation, who's just turned up at the back, and people like Mentera. And actually, if you look at those people that we employ, they're engineers, normally with specialist kit as well. So those CR&D type projects, they're really exciting. And then the final stage, and actually, to be fair, I tend to be the one that gets to do this stuff, is doing things like working with the UK Steel Council. I sit on the UK Battery Task Force. So actually, some of those real UK strategic level, my boss sits on the Energy Council. So you've got all these different elements. And for me, it's making sure that Wales is leading in that. And from the get-go included, I do keep joking that we're going to turn Warwick Manufacturing Group into the Welsh Manufacturing Group, but don't tell them, right? We're taking over the world. But there is that piece. I don't think people in the UK really understand that brilliance of Welsh manufacturing and actually what we can do. And so making sure that flows in from the get-go, that's my, I've lived here since I was 22. I may not have got the accent, but I've got 2 Welsh kids, right? So one of which is hoping to play rugby for Wales. So I feel like I might eventually be converted.
Watch this space.
If I haven't already. Yeah, so for me, I'm loving it. The team, I love the team that we've got. It's really great. And yeah, the other bit is it's really a startup version of a catapult. So I feel like I'm learning new skills, like, juggling cleaners alongside trying to get UK government strategy stuff done. So I think it's been really brilliant sort of learning and growth, and hopefully people will just see some of the projects that we're doing and the value we're adding back to Wales. That's really what my hope is.
Fantastic.
I wonder if people got questions.
Yeah.
Right, if you have any questions, can I ask you to use the microphone, please? Questions? I should say that first.
Is it a welding question, Hayley?
Well, it would be a highly technical welding question if it was, but unfortunately I'm going to ask a question with my other hat on, and I've made notes.
Oh,
So,
brilliant.
for those who don't know, my name is Hayley Pells, and I'm with the Institute of the Motor Industry. And thank you for such a fantastic talk. I've got lots of really good stats that I'm going to be picking your brains about afterwards. I'm looking at you, John.
Good.
For better.
Grab a coffee.
So, well, definitely. Maybe tequila. So the high volume international manufacturers create, I feel, opportunity for us to develop agility and growth within new methodologies. How do we hang on to the IP whilst allowing these manufacturing giants to produce under license? What would your expectation or ask be from government to facilitate that?
She's annoyingly clever. I should have warned you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Shall I start and
You go.
you can bail me out?
Yeah, definitely.
For me, gut feel, understanding design IP. I think the UK is particularly innovative around design methodologies, and we can see from various sectors, if you control the design, you can then control the eye of where the IP flows worldwide. So that can be design IP, but it can also be manufacturing IP. So we're doing a lot of work in HVM Catapult at the moment around what we call digital engineering or smart design. It's really adopting digital technologies to allow design for X, whether X is circularity, whether X is recycling, but ultimately keeping hold of that IP and then licensing it internationally, I think is a fantastic model that plays to the strengths of Wales and the broader UK economy. In terms of particular interventions on request for UK government, I think there's a big challenge around some of that design capability is in regulation. If we want to do accelerated designs, we need to adopt technologies like certification by analysis or by design. So it's using numerical techniques rather than actual testing to do the certification. The regulation of that is really quite tricky. Obviously, safety is always number one, but having the right backing to do regulatory sandboxes for the right sectors, I think, would be particularly key, and getting industry involved to help drive that regulation to open the pathways to exploit would be ideal. Jacqui?
So for me, the other piece of that puzzle of getting things sticky and those big companies to stay, I think it's really topical in South Wales with LG and Sony and others. We saw it in the 90s and we suffered with it in the 90s. The two companies that I'm talking to that are onshoring manufacturing back to the UK, both of them have got R&D here. So I think when you look at what you're doing, it's that innovative piece. It's the same as you were sort of saying, it's around, can you, it comes back to people, right? Will you have the people, right? So we have clusters of knowledge, and we need to really nurture them and keep them in the UK. One of them, for example, TWI have a great NDT team down in Port Talbot. They are world class, and I could spend every day there, but they'd probably get bored of me. But it's those clusters, that know-how, that knowledge, because it just doesn't make it worth moving. And there's companies like KLA who are here today, Vishay. You sort of see these big giants, but where they're doing R&D, it's fundamentally part of the Welsh ecosystem, because the people, nobody really now wants to upheave their family and move. And Wales is a great place to live. It's a great place to be and it's a great place to live. So there's definite advantages there.
So first of all, thank you for your enthusiasm. This is the first talk I've been to this morning, and both of you, it's like quite infectious.
Good.
I wanted to pick you up, Jacqui, on you're saying people in the UK don't understand the brilliance of manufacturing in Wales. I'm biased because I'm from the comms and media side of things, and I love brilliant case studies. But what do you think will work in terms of getting our national narrative right? And I'm just thinking, do we need more content champions, actually equivalent to the factory floor, right the way through to the CEO level?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I love a specialist, and I think people miss in manufacturing that actually comms, you're all specialists, right? And it's how do we tease out stories and narratives so people really can feel what's going on. And I think that's an interesting one that we're, content managers. I think the next generation's better at sharing. And I think that's really what we're looking for. There's been some really good Welsh comms, and I feel like we should really play on it, where we actually really put people in the spotlight who talk about what they love. You were saying it's infectious, right? We tend to be a little bit stuck, I think, in some corporate comms areas, and sometimes we really do need to bring out the people side and the generations of it, right? Manufacturing is a really interesting sort of career because it's dependent on people that are too stubborn to go home when things aren't working right, and they stay and get it fixed. And I mean, it gives me goosebumps even just saying it out loud. Anyone who's done 12, 16 hours because it's not working, actually that's really what we're looking for, right? It's that passion, that love of what we do. And we've got to somehow get that into the strategic roadmap type thing and the skills so that actually the next generation really do want to go into it. Isaac that was here earlier is a young 18-year-old apprentice, and he's absolutely steeped in it. Like, it comes out of his pores, this need to fix stuff. We quite often have to pull him out of spaces, make sure he's not doing things without everything being lined up from the house. But that's what you want in your engineers. You want them to be very proactively looking to fix things, looking to mend things, looking to build stuff. So yeah, there's something around making it more magical. I think some really good case studies. I really recommend, if you aren't connected to Senior Flexonics, to go and see what they've done. They were commissioning plants around the world. They were doing R&D in Kremlin, and they are now have the most gorgeous new factory. And they are currently, even before that factory opened, they were making battery thermal cooling plates for Lamborghinis. So this is serious stuff. This is serious technology and really important.
I just want to pick up on one thing. I think the key for me is storytelling. I think everything that you'll touch and see today will have been manufactured at some point. And I think as a sector, we're just not very good at storytelling. I don't think we shout enough, to government, but also just to the general public about what manufacturing means. We almost need like a Brian Cox for manufacturing, someone that is a great personality, can get on national TV and demystify manufacturing in the same way that he did for physics.
I'm looking forward to that campaign with you in it, John.
It won't be me.
But I think when we get together, we can do that, right? I mean,
it's true.
We do tend to want to do that. Has anyone else got any other questions?
2 minutes.
I do like winding up the timekeeper.
Hi, Jacqui. My name's Paul Ellsmore. I'm from the offshore renewable energy Catapult, and as Jacqui mentioned earlier, I've got quite a thing about productivity. However, in my sector, offshore wind, and in Wales, that's looking towards floating or at least deep water wind. The problem we've got is not that the supply chain isn't capable of doing autonomy and automatic welding, that kind of thing, automation in general. It's that the products that are there aren't designed for that kind of manufacturing. How do we get around that? How do we incentivize components and products that are going to be used in the UK energy infrastructure to be manufactured in a way that we can actually manufacture, that we've got the facilities for, when the big projects are delivered by foreign companies who are, frankly, quite comfortable with the idea of buying kit from the Far East or somewhere cheap in Europe that doesn't use those new technologies? How do we, what levers does government in particular have to pull to make those products accessible to our manufacturing base?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, especially for a country the size of the UK. We're not quite big enough to do what the US can do and insist on local content, for example, because you then can accelerate prices and become anti-competitive and end up in court with some big global companies. So it is challenging, but I think it's the same challenge in some ways that you see in automotive, that we were doing for batteries and the Faraday Battery Challenge. How do you do it? And part of it is getting that toehold in and finding ways where companies actually start to offer, maybe not at the gigafactory level, but will have technologies that can offer into a gigafactory. And then the problem with offshore wind is we just don't have those big OEMs like a JLR or a Nissan. So really what we're looking to do is, I think, bring companies so that they can join together and have a really valuable offer into tier ones for offshore wind, for example. And we're seeing some of that. Port Talbot's got, I think, a consortium of about 14 companies working together to have an offer. And I think we've got to be pretty creative and actually be approaching those companies like that. I think there's also where, I know the British government are trying hard to look at whether an OEM might consider coming to the UK as well in that space. I mean, what's your view, Paul? Because I know this is your day job as well. Oh, I forgot you haven't got the mic.
Sorry, yeah, we're just sort of like slightly running out of time. Sorry.
We'll all carry on.
Yes, and I hate cutting there. I'm so sorry, but we do have a really busy programme. But I just want to say a huge thank you to both of you. What a fantastic way to start the Pulse stage here at Wales Tech Week. Thank you both so much.
Cheers, Joe.
Thanks, Jacqui.